Welcome back to Backstage Pass. I'm Bob Tooby from Event Planner News. How would you like to host your next corporate event or meeting in a unique piece of British heritage? With 700 years of regal history, Grade 1 listed Ashridge House sits secluded in 190 acres of Grade 2 landscape gardens in Hertfordshire. Joining me to discuss its history, sustainability challenges, and how they work with local businesses are Matthew Wright, Head of Marketing, David Evans, Managing Director, and Noel Busby, Banqueting Head Chef. Before we get started, a big thank you to our partners for their continued support, Vivid Inc. and Eventflow. More about them at the end of the episode, and of course in the show notes. Well, welcome, Matt.
Hi, Bob.
How are you doing this afternoon?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not too bad.
Good, good. You're Head of Marketing for Ashridge House.
I'm indeed.
A big, huge, sprawling of a place.
Yeah,
Absolutely, I've seen the website. It looks absolutely amazing.
yeah. No, it's quite a stunning property, and I think we officially would go by a historic estate. But yeah, we'll take sprawling estates. Really stunning.
Well, it is historic.
Yeah.
The building itself, and also your landscape in and around, that's also listed as being graded.
Yes, absolutely. The house itself is grade one, and that dates back to 1283 when it was first a monastery. And we also have 190 acres of grade two star listed gardens as well. And all in all, it makes for quite a stunning visit.
And somebody could probably talk a bit more about that would be David Evans.
Hello, Bob.
Welcome, David.
Thank you.
So so you know quite a bit about the history.
A fair amount. It's got quite a story to it. As Matt said, it started in the 13th century as a monastery, 1283, and apparently a phial of Christ's blood was actually brought to Ashridge to establish it as a monastery back in the 13th century. Apparently, that's how they established holy places in those days. Um, and then it was a monastery for a few hundred years. Monastery and education were sort of hand in hand in those days. So religion and education were very much together. So interesting when we talk about Ashridge now and its role today as a real centre of education. That education actually started back in the 13th century, which is really interesting. A couple of hundred years later, I like to fast forward through a couple of hundred years of the monastery. We come to Henry VIII, and so the abolition of the monasteries, the Reformation. Ashridge was one of those monasteries that Henry VIII decided that he would take for his own, as he tended to do. And it was one of his many hunting lodges. And in fact, there's deer still in the park today around us, and they are said to be descendants from the original deer that Henry VIII was hunting back in the 16th century. Yeah, quite a special time in Ashridge's history. Elizabeth I, who was Princess Elizabeth, then his daughter, spent a lot of time here. And she was then actually arrested. And this is a really big moment in British history, actually. Probably one of the things Ashridge is most famous for. But she was arrested here by her sister Mary on suspicion of treason and taken to the Tower of London from Ashridge. So it's a really big moment in English history, happened right here, which is so fascinating for all the history buffs out there. But yeah, super interesting history. Then fast forward again, it was sort of the Bridgewater family took over Ashridge, and a series of earls and dukes lived here. And then at the beginning of the early 19th century, they decided that the monastery was too drafty, too cold, too unfashionable, and they actually completely razed the whole monastery to the ground. And the only things that survived were a barn that we still have on site today, which we use for weddings, and then a beautiful cellar downstairs as well. So those are the only two things that survived. The rest of it was completely rebuilt, and it was rebuilt in the neo-Gothic architecture style. And it was built to impress. It was a party house. They were notorious for having parties here. The good and the great from all over the UK, all the big names in literature, they all would come to Ashridge House to have these incredible parties. and it was built to show off. So if you look at the front of Ashridge, it's the widest house in the country at the time that it was built. So it's a very, 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 very wide house, but really shallow. And they built it like that just to really impress people as people would arrive at Ashridge. And then another thing, which was really state of the art when they built the house, was the staircases in the main hall. And so the staircases, the way they've been built, it's really hard to see how they can actually stand up, because they're all cantilevered into the stone, which you can't see. So it creates this amazing staircase in the main hall that we have. And actually, for those Harry Potter fans, they were the inspiration for the sliding staircases of Hogwarts. So Warner Brothers came here and took moldings of the staircase, and then recreated. And I was chatting with the one of the directors recently from the Harry Potter movies, and he was saying how challenging it was to recreate these stone staircases in steel, which is what they had to use for the Harry Potter sets. So yeah, it was Bridgewater family, designed to impress, designed to be a party house. And then it became the early 20th century. It was taken over by the Conservative Party as a headquarters for training. During World War One, it became a centre of respite for soldiers coming back from the front, and recovery and somewhat of a hospital. Then in World War Two, Charing Cross Hospital moved their maternity ward from central London because of the Blitz, and they moved it out to Ashridge. And so we had, I think it's around 1,200 babies that were born at Ashridge. And so now and again we get a visitor coming along and saying, "Can I see this room? You know, I was born in this room." They've got a photo of them with their mum from 1944. So really incredible history. And since then, I think the big history is 1959. Ashridge was founded as a place of learning once again, and Ashridge Management College was founded in 1959. So it was founded in partnership with Unilever and with Guinness and with some other big leading brands of the time, and established itself really quickly as one of the world's leading business schools. And that business school, Ashridge, is very much still thriving and active today, and a big part of what we do here at Ashridge day to day.
You couldn't imagine a more British, most historical and well-connected in history venue
Yeah,
ever, could you?
absolutely.
You just can't think of anything more English than that.
No, absolutely. And the Bridgewater, you may have heard of the Bridgewater Canal, very famous canal
Yeah.
here in England. And that was designed and built by one of the Dukes of Bridgewater, who's very famous, is referred to as the Canal Duke. But yeah, incredible connections, incredible people that have lived here during this time.
Matt, how does that bear on the marketing? Do you find that people are coming far and wide to have some sort of corporate event at this place, considering it's like screaming Englishness at everybody?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everything that David's just said, it's all of our corporate offer is just backed up by decades of education and history and, just amazing credentials. So people are choosing to come worldwide to have corporate events at Ashridge. Not only do we have the facilities and the grounds and the building, but the history and the education, it all adds to just quite a special place. And I think we can talk about this, and we're doing a podcast right now, but Astridge is a feeling. When you're here, it feels special. I think anybody that comes here for whatever reason, it feels quite special. And so, from a marketing point of view, we're trying to sell that. We're trying to really tell a story and sell a feeling. And yeah, I think anyone that comes here, anyone that's been to Ashridge will say that it feels quite special. And all of this adds up to really, we are a world-class events venue. And we're very, very lucky and privileged to host some stunning weddings. We do a massive Christmas light show every year where people from Hertfordshire can come along. We've got a fantastic cafe on site as well, so we are open to the public some areas. And then a huge part of what we do is fantastic corporate events and conferences.
Yeah. Let's bring in Noel Busby, your head chef.
Yes, I am. Nice to meet you, Bob.
Not to mean you. Are you still producing historical style banquets, and is that still going on?
So I think that yeah, there is a move back to some of the older style of food, and some of the things that we do here are trying to keep in with that. The private dinners and events that we do, are on a large scale, and it's really nice to see that a lot of places lost those big events, and we do some big dinners here, and on quite a grand scale, and we are leaning back towards some of the older styles of smoking food and using live fire for those kinds of things. So those styles of food are coming back, and it does lead towards the history of the property that we write menus around that.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's such a joy every day to drive up to this building and see it from the front and remind yourself how lucky you are to be part of that. And the whole process of coming through the doors, it isn't just the guests that get that experience. It's us as people that work here every day get that. And it's interesting to be in that environment.
Quickly have a chat about the thing that everybody's now talking about, and it seems to be not so much of a tick box exercise anymore, but there are certain challenges that a graded building has to go through when it comes to sustainability.
Yes, I mean, yeah, we're challenged on all those areas. I would say that, right from the booking of the event and all the way through is that process. David would obviously be able to give you more information about that side of it.
I mean, it is a super interesting challenge, right? So we're a grade one listed building. We also have a number of grade two listed buildings. And then we have some buildings that were built in the 80s and 90s as well. Um, we have an obligation to be custodians of a national asset. I mean, the house is grade one listed. It's stunning, it's beautiful, and it requires a lot of upkeep. We operate 189 bedrooms, over 100 weddings a year. We're a business school, we are a centre for executive education, and we're a leading venue for corporate hospitality in the Southeast. Um, and we've got corporate clients who increasingly are asking questions around ESG, so environmental, social, and governance. And what are we doing? And so I think, and above all of this, we've got to remain commercially viable as an organization. So we've got so many things that we have to balance. And I think it's so interesting, when you look at modern conference centers, you know, on the one hand, amazing, so much easier to achieve. The buildings have been designed in a certain way. Our house was designed to be, as I mentioned before, a party house, right? So zero thought was given to sustainability. Zero thought was given to the materials you're using in terms of insulating or retaining heat or stopping drafts. We have ceilings that are incredibly high that probably require 2 or 3 times the amount of heating in terms of the space that a normal hotel or conference venue would have. We have windows that are all grade one listed, that you can't just go and double glaze. Everything has to be done, incredibly sympathetically, that you can't just retrofit things. And everything that we do has to be considered by Historic England as well. The materials that we're using, the approach that we're using, and even the styles and the trades that need to be recreated to bring back the same style that was used when the house was built. So it's a really, really, really interesting challenge. And the good news is, and I've said this before, is that because it is a sort of a bit of a drafty house with very high ceilings and lots of opportunity for heat loss, by doing certain things, you can achieve some really big results. And they're simple things. So that's the good news. That's sort of one of the only benefits really of a house like this, is that when you do make improvements, the improvements are significant in terms of carbon reduction and also commercially in terms of the amount of money we're spending on heating and lighting a venue like this. Um, But it is a big challenge that we have to solve. And we've got to do that within the constraints of being a listed building. And we've got to figure out how to reduce our energy consumption on site. So really interesting challenge. You mentioned before, Bob, as well, that organizations are asking more and more questions, and you talked about this tick box exercise, and it I think it very much used to be a tick box exercise. There was a lot of greenwashing, a lot of corporations when they were doing their procurement process and deciding where they were going to hold their events would have to check certain boxes to make sure that the venue was doing certain things. And that has become so much more the case. But it's also become not just a tick box, sorry, a tick box ticking exercise. It's also that people very genuinely are very passionate about this as well. And so when our guests and clients come to Ashridge House, they really want to see these things that we're doing or we say we're doing in practice. It's not just a tick box exercise anymore. And so from the way we talk to the way we talk about our food, and obviously Noel can talk more about that in a moment. It has to be real. And we're part of a number of initiatives and certifications here at Ashridge as well that really prove that we are doing the right things. But it's so important that we communicate that to our clients as well when they're here.
Yeah, there's more and more demand for ESG reports, and basically, you just need to be a lot more transparent.
Yeah.
You need to be more up on these things because the demand is coming from corporate planners, and whether it's in-house or a third party, they're asking really important questions, and you need to sort of meet that. And Noel, I suppose that's the same for you when it comes to the food that's being provided. You need to be able to somehow. Are you collecting all the relevant information to say yes, this is locally caught, this is being sourced from a local area?
Yes, we do. And it's also just going back on what David was saying as well. It isn't just about the fact that, previously in years gone by, organizers used to plan an event and tell people that you were sustainable, and it was kind of left at that. But as David was saying, people that come to these events want to see that information for themselves, want to see it there. We put out a lot of signage on our buffets explaining where products came from. So when we're using English charcuterie instead of buying from abroad, we put that out there, that our salami is from Suffolk and that we are buying our chickens locally and that kind of thing. So that we're actually giving the information to the people on the venue, at the venue, on the event themselves, not just the organisers, because previously it was just about companies, like you say, trying to do the best they could, whereas the people actually come on these courses now or use us as a venue want that information themselves.
It's all about providing the attendees and the organisers with choices.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's very important that we as chefs as well, we have the interaction with our guests. So, so that when they're out there, that we're there to answer questions. And if people do want to understand about our sustainability, that we're quite honest and open about it. We're not hiding away in the kitchen, gone are the days of the chef just used to cook and put some food out and somebody else deals with it. We have to get involved with that, and it's been a difficult journey for some chefs to understand that and become part of that, because some of us took this job because we could just hide away in a kitchen and nobody saw us, and that's the way things were. But as we're growing as generations, and the chefs that we're training and we're teaching, we're giving them those skills to interact with people and to understand what people want. It isn't just about cooking food; it's about the knowledge of the food. It's about where things come from, the style of how we cook, because of the sustainability of how we cook as well. So yeah.
Do you find it's a bit more stressful these days? Maybe a little bit more pressure, because not only are you now providing provenance for the food that you're providing, but there's also taking into account the demands of Gen Z, who want more healthier food, non-alcoholic drinks, and of course there's people on weight loss jabs who need better choices or demanding more choices.
I think that is one way you can look at it, is that it is a little bit more stressful, but actually it's just a chance for us to talk about what we were potentially already doing anyway. A lot of the things that we do, people think we have changed and adapted to that. If you look back many, many years ago, milk used to come in a glass bottle. Do you know what I mean? And we're looking at these kind of recyclable and we were doing a lot of these things. When I started in the trade 30 odd years ago, we were actually very sustainable. And then we went through a period in the late 90s, early 2000s, where we were less sustainable because we were looking at cost. And trying to reduce cost as much as we could. So we were mass producing, which was less of that. So I think it can be stressful to a degree, but it's an opportunity to talk about what we do, and it's a chance for us to be excited. And we've got some really passionate chefs here that want to talk about it. They want to be involved. They want to be doing something. We've got a chef de partie that works in our kitchen, a guy called Raj. His passion for sustainability is really, really high. If you put the wrong thing in the wrong bin, he's there behind you, picking it out, putting it in the right bin to tell you that you're recycling properly, that kind of thing. And that's an opportunity for us to do that with our guests as well. So I think you're right. It does create a certain amount of pressure, but as chefs, we thrive on pressure. It's what we do for a living. We work in a hot environment that is pressurized. So for us, it's just another part of what we do, and it gives us an opportunity to be excited about something new. And as chefs, part of the reason we take the job is because anybody that says as a chef they know everything, for me, is probably a fool. Because one of the reasons that I took a job as a chef, and a lot of people take it, is because there's always something learning. You're moving forward, you're evolving. There's always something different. There's always a new style of cooking. There's a new product, so I think it's an opportunity.
So with sustainability challenges and the way people are changing their eating habits, it's not I guess you could say it's not actually stressful, but it's a way of self-development and way of keeping up with modern trends and developing new skills.
Yes, I think so, and it lends itself to a lot of different cooking processes where, I think for a 10-year period, I think as an industry, we were set and everything was the same and everybody had the same style and the same standards. There's such a diversity now because people started looking into, how we cook products. So, we do quite a lot of smoking here, we cure, which means that the products last longer. So you're not disposing of a product, you can make it last longer and you can use it over a longer period. You can also reuse products. So products that you may have cooked and chilled, you can then smoke it. So again, you're getting an extra use out of something. So the sustainability and longevity of products is better. So I think, yeah, you're right. I think it's a handy thing for chefs, that we are developing and moving forwards, and we're being pushed by this to do that, which is really, it's kind of good. I do agree. I think there was a part of a time where we all sort of went, oh my God, how are we going to deal with this? But if you're interested and you want to move forward, and there is that real whole thing here at Ashridge, it isn't just about the kitchen. There's the whole thing. Zora's not here today, but she's looking at products that she can grow on site for us. So sustainability is even more. So everybody plays off each other and everybody works together as a team.
Matt, what is the inquiries like? Is it people saying, God, you guys are so sustainable, you're so historic, I've got to have this place?
Yeah, I mean, there is. It's a mixed bag, really. And I think to follow on from what Noel was saying is that, event planners are looking to work with venues that align with their values. And so we have to make it quite clear through, different certifications. I know we've got our ISO 14001 certified, and, they want to see that, and they can see from there we're committed and we are, on the same page when it comes to sustainability as organizations. And then I think also is the ultimate goal for a corporate event here at Ashridge is that it's the experience of the delegates, it's the experience of the people taking part in the event itself. And now people are making such more sustainable choices every single day. And so, to what Noel was saying, it's then, well, we then need to cater for those sustainable choices. And, whether that's through food and whether that's through, the choices we make in our housekeeping and all the other sort of things and initiatives going on around the site here. So it's aligning values that people want to see, and that's how we book, that's how we get contracts, that's how we get people here. And then when we get people here, it's really then about catering for their sustainable choices as well. And the idea of there being a tick box exercise, I think it almost sounds a bit like, yes, that's how it was, but it's a bit of a throwaway because we still have to tick that box at the end of the day. And when we have the challenges that David was speaking about earlier, that we still have to make sure we can get that box ticked. And we're doing that, and we are doing so much more as well. But yeah, I mean, there's no denying people are having to make and wanting to make sustainable choices when it comes to picking a venue. And so, we're committed to meeting those organizations there.
Yeah, it does sound like there's an awful lot of hoops to go through and a lot of things to organize and all the certification. But you have to remember at the end of the day, there is a demand for it. So being as sustainable as you guys are is actually it makes business sense. It becomes a
Absolutely.
selling point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way that, that's the way the industry's going as well. So, even, and I know we're talking majority around our kind of corporate events, but, across all the events, our weddings, couples are making sustainable choices for their weddings nowadays. That is a trend that we're seeing. You have to keep up. When people are visiting events like our Christmas light trail, they are looking to see whether the event that they are supporting is a sustainable event. People are making these choices. So if you don't meet them there, if you don't, if you're not catering to what they care about and what matters to them, then you isolate them. So, equally we are as passionate about sustainability, but you're right, it's a business choice, and it would feel somewhat silly not to take it quite seriously.
Is that something you agree with, David? I mean, as an expert on the history of the place, you see that as a way of differentiating yourself. I can almost say that word, differentiating yourselves from a lot of other venues who may offer the same sort of services.
Yeah, absolutely. It's essential. I mean, we do a number of sort of calculations when we look to make some of these capital investments in the house and the grounds, and what's the payback period, and we become obsessed with, okay, if we make this investment of £50,000, we'll get a payback of 7.63 years, and that's when after that point we'll start to actually save money. But we often ignore the commercial impact that these decisions have in terms of attracting business and new clients. And I think, even talking about this now within this group, it's a reminder for us to focus even more on that, to focus more on the impact that the projects that we have on attracting new business to Ashridge House, not just the cost payback in terms of a capital investment, which is something I get often tied up in.
And just to add to that, sorry, David, is that just makes me think that actually by attracting business to Ashridge House, that allows us to sustain Ashridge House as well as a historical venue. So it's super important. All the work that we're doing here is to, sustain this wonderful property and this wonderful grounds. And without that new business, we would not be able to do that. And when you visit Ashridge House, the place is absolutely stunning. It's just the business allows us to keep this place looking as amazing as it should do and as it always has done. So it's kind of full circle sustainability, really.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all very proud of the fact that working here at Ashridge House, our goal is to, for Ashridge to be commercially successful, to reinvest back into the building. And we see projects going on all across the site in terms of, this last summer we had to replace the stonework on the front of our flag tower, and that was over £600,000 that we had to reinvest back into the building and the stonework. And when we talk about sustainability, it isn't just about those things we traditionally think about, but when it comes to a Grade 1 listed building, a site like ours, being sustainable means being here for the future as well and investing constantly back into the building. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree.
Yeah, well, sustainability has got several kind of meanings to it. I mean, a sustainable business means it keeps on going for long periods of time, but you also have environmental sustainability, food sustainability. So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. If you're able to reinvest, that could be seen as a positive thing.
Totally. I also wanted to touch a little bit on sort of technology and engineering as well, because that's something we spend quite a bit of our time here focusing on at Ashridge, particularly with the size of the site that we have. Um, and for those people that are really sort of have a bit of an engineering brain, or love tech projects. We do a lot of that at Ashridge House. And so just to talk maybe about a couple of projects we've been doing recently that are having a really big impact for us positively. One of them has come out of a little bit of a tragedy we had. One of our basements of our accommodation blocks flooded last year, and unfortunately the mains water pipe burst and filled up the basement and completely ruined all of the equipment down there. The boiler, everything had to go. And here at Ashridge, we are on oil, and we are working our way to get off oil and reducing our oil consumption. But this, what was initially a bit of a tragedy, actually ended up being an opportunity for us. And so, particularly with places like Ashridge, where you're dealing with, really old buildings and things that need replacing, is always taking advantage of these opportunities when they come along. And so what we've done now is we've replaced what was an oil boiler with a series of heat pumps and the latest technology in terms of managing energy efficiency. And we're also installing a series of batteries as well, so that we can benefit from consumption of electricity and storing electricity into the batteries during low peak times, and then consuming it during peak times as well, which will have a really big impact for us as well. So that's just one example where tragedy has led to opportunity. Another sort of engineering project we've had here at Ashridge House is in the main house, where our hot water supply and our heating supply were part of the same circuit, all at 80 degrees. So 80 degrees is a safe temperature to manage water and ensure that you don't have Legionella in the system. And so what we were actually able to do is disconnect these two systems and actually lower the flow temperature of our radiator hot water system to 65 degrees. It seems like a really simple thing, but a couple of things come out of that. One is, by having a 65-degree return on the radiator system, it allows the boiler to function about 20% more efficiently, which is incredible saving in terms of carbon and also cost for us. The second thing it enables us to do is it enables us to simulate the temperature that heat pumps would work at. So as we are working towards net zero, as we move off oil, obviously one of the main technologies we're looking at are heat pumps. But how can heat pumps work? You hear about heat pumps a lot in the press at the moment, and new house builders are installing heat pumps now automatically, and there's been some good press about them and some bad press about them, about do they actually really keep a house warm, and you have to have the heating running all the time. But by doing this disconnect and running our radiators at 65 instead of 80, it allows us to simulate that temperature that the heat pumps would actually be working at when we install heat pumps in the future. And there was huge concern initially that no way would the house be able to cope, with these huge ceilings we've got and these big spaces, and with windows that aren't double glazed, and lack of insulation, and these old cast iron radiators that have been there for over 100 years. How on earth are they going to cope? And in fact, they've coped incredibly well. So we are over the moon that our first test of being able to run on a cooler temperature to simulate heat pumps has been successful, and it's really starting to pave the way for us to think differently about how we heat the house in the future. So really, really exciting.
That's really fascinating. That's really interesting the way that, as you said, you had a major problem, a bit of a tragedy going on, but out of that gives you a chance to not just improve, but in some ways innovate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been a real opportunity for us. I mean, there's no way we could have replaced an oil boiler with an oil boiler. I think that would have been an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, that would have been good.
No, exactly.
I mean, Matt, would you be able to sell that?
I might struggle with that one a bit, David. Yeah.
I'm sure.
So following what David was saying about investing and in the building and the infrastructure and changing things there, there's also another thing we could mention, which is the sustainable practices that also happen in the kitchens must also have an effect on the local area, where you are sourcing locally and choosing sustainable options locally.
Yeah, so we've looked at our supplier chain, and we not only with reducing our carbon footprint, but with using products that are more local as well. We're sustaining the area and helping the suppliers that we've got. So we use a local bakery for our bread, which is brought into us. So yeah, a much smaller organisation, but a much nicer product for us to use. They're using locally produced flour, which means that again they're sustainable in themselves. So it isn't always just about the product being local. The people that you're using need to be using sustainable products as well, and providing them to you as a sustainable product. So yeah, we use a local bakery, and we've also got a local company which provides us with varied local products. So we use a company called Abbey Cheese. Now, everybody thinks that means they're just a cheese company. They're not. They provide us with lots of variations of food. So they provide us with local chicken. So there's a chicken farm that's literally 8 miles away from us, and they supply us with free range chickens, which is obviously on a sustainable level in itself. But because they're slaughtered within 8 miles, our carbon footprint is very, very low. But also, it's helping the environment from other aspects of the fact that we're sustaining the area, and the money that is being produced is going back into the local area to be environmentally good practice as well. On top of that, we use a local fish company, but obviously fish isn't always local. We're not by the sea. However, they do work with the Marine Society, which means that virtually all of the product that they use is sustainable products to themselves. So we're buying through them, which means it's sustainable. We use a lot of line caught fish, which is obviously better than using nets because it doesn't trap and catch smaller fish in those nets. And anything that's underweight is then thrown back and allowed to grow to the correct size that you want fish to be at, which gives us a better product, a more mature product that has a better flavour as well. And so from that point of view, we're doing that. We're also using local butchers. One of the butchers that we use gets a lot of our product locally. And it's all British. We don't try not to, and it's very rare that we will have a product that's outside of England or outside of the British market. We're just doing some work with it at the moment. I've just had a company come in from Dunlow, which is not that far away from us. So Prior's Hall is a real famous pork supplier. So we're looking at bringing them on board as a pork supplier, which means that I think they're 60 miles away. So again, it's very good low carbon footprint, but all of their pork is sustainable. It's free range, and so it's very important to us that we use those products and that we're instilling into our guests that this is what we do. It's what we're passionate about, and the environment allows us to do that. We're in a really good area that has some good growth.
One of the amazing things about using and sourcing locally is that you build up those long-term relationships, which allows you to develop the products and services between you.
Yes, yeah, and so one of the suppliers we were talking about, Abbey Cheese, Chris, he comes in on a regular basis to meet us and see us. He was in the other week and was just talking about cheese and the cheeses that we're doing. Again, we don't buy any foreign cheeses. We may have brie on the menu, but it's a British brie. And funnily enough, the British brie that we use was actually entered 2 years ago in the. So there's a festival for brie in France every year. And the product that we buy was entered in that anonymously and won the competition, but then was disqualified because it turned out that it wasn't French and you weren't allowed to be in that competition and you weren't allowed to win it unless you were French. So again, the quality of what we're doing isn't sacrificed by using local products. These are really good products. And we don't just buy, as David said, it isn't always about buying the cheapest product and sustainable. Sometimes we will reinvest because we know that money is being passed on to the producers of that, and so it helps us with all of our environmental issues.
I love the story that British brie is better than French brie. That's so good.
Yeah. And it is about that, there are some really good products. Charcuterie generally is seen as an Italian, as a Spanish product. All of these products that you would use. We have a supplier called Harvey and Brockless who uses, and they are predominantly, and they've become very, very popular. They're on a lot of Instagram and stuff like that. You can actually walk into their offices that they've got in London and buy off the shelf from them. They may be a wholesale supplier, but they're now open to the general public because of the fact that people want to get involved with it. But like I said before, we're using Parma ham that is now British. And it's taken years for that to develop, and we're now at a stage where it's matured enough for us to use it. So we're starting to see these products come through on the market that you weren't seeing before because they were generically made in a certain area. And these products are very, very high standard. One of the issues over the years was that these products were also, because they were quite exclusive, were very expensive. But because now people are buying these across the board, the price has now come down, so it's made it available, which is, I think, a really, really interesting thing, is that sustainability is now becoming cost effective as well. It all ties together. Before and over years, if you wanted to be sustainable, it was very expensive to do that, and that was why there was a lot of this washing and just saying that you were doing something, and then people were actually doing something else.
That's an important point to make, that sustainability can actually mean, or can lead you to be a little bit more profitable and do better for that.
Yeah.
Matt, is something you wanted to come in with?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating hearing this, but I'm always thinking about how that actually then affects the visitor experience, and actually how that translates down to a delegate's, for example, if I went to a conference last year and I ate a large pizza at lunchtime, and then I wonder why I feel a bit sluggish in the afternoon. And so I just really, we're making all these really healthy, sustainable choices. And so what kind of effect does that have on a delegate's productivity and actually what they're getting out of being here at Ashridge?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that over the years, having worked for various companies, where we have concentrated on this. A lot of produce before and a lot of lunches was very much a curry, a hot pot. They were very heavy dishes. So the menus that we develop now are sustainable, but they're also about the energy that you can give to people. Because if I have a roast dinner at lunchtime, all I want to do is go to sleep in the afternoon. So the way we design and develop our menus is worked around giving people the energy and the ability to work in the afternoons. And I think it's very important, like Matt said, it's that whole process. When we plan something as a venue, we plan from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave. There's a whole backlog and a journey, and we call it the guest journey and the guest experience. What is it that you get on arrival? Yes, it needs to be nice, it needs to be sweet, but again, it doesn't need to be too sickly, because is it going to give you an upset stomach and you won't manage the day, that kind of thing. The energy drinks and the proteins that we're giving to you need to be making sure that you can journey throughout the day. And like you say, if you're on a course and you're having an experience, you need people to be taking stuff in and it be invested in the course that are on. So we might seem like a background experience, but we're actually quite important. One of the things that we did recently, we have changed our breaks package throughout the day. So it was very much based around a lot of chocolate and a lot of heavy drinks and crisps and sugary things like Coca-Cola. We've now gone with sustainable products across the board. So everything we have on our breaks is in sustainable packaging. Even the crisps are in a paper bag as opposed to a plastic bag. So sustainability is wonderful. But the products that we're using are lighter, they're better, they're a little bit of fun. We have some of the Tunnocks things on there, so like a Tunnocks tea cake and things like that. So there's that enjoyment for the guest as well. But you are, like you say, you're making their journey throughout the day enjoyable. And for me as a chef, the most important part of what they're doing is the food. So I want them to walk away remembering that experience, but also feeling that they got something out of it. And they may have learned something as well. They may have seen food that they haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's important that, as you said, to keep it so you're not sending your your guests to sleep in the afternoon. If you're hosting a three-day conference or something or corporate event, and then everybody's nodding off in the afternoon, I'm sure the organisers wouldn't be best pleased. So we're at the beginning of 2026. What do you see coming up for Ashridge House this year?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, and from the kind of marketing and communication side of things, is just to continue to tell the story of what we're doing here at Ashridge House. Really shout about our sustainability credentials, and just make sure that we are aligning with organizations. We're listening to our clients. We're listening to the people that come here for an event, and that we're telling the story of Ashridge House in a way that aligns with their values. So for me, it's about making sure we're doing that through educational pieces on our website, that we're shouting about it across our social channels, and all of our collateral and all of our marketing is really shouting about the sustainability activities and all the hard work that everyone here is really doing. So I think that's a big one for me.
How about you, David? What do you see coming up this year?
I mean, for me, it's all about growth. We are in a massive growth stage at Ashridge House, and it's really exciting to see. So I think, growth brings opportunities. It brings the opportunity to reinvest as well back into the projects and the fabric of the building and all of those things that we spoke about before. First of all, we have to be commercially viable. That has to be, because that funds everything that we do, right? So growth, we're opening an incredible new venue on our site here at Ashridge House as well. So it's combining on this 14th century barn that I spoke about earlier, which is really harks back to the original monastery days, and a stunning coach house and a big landscaping project to create Duke's Yard. Now, Duke was the name of the horse of I think it's the seventh Earl of Bridgewater. When I was speaking about the Bridgewaters earlier, it was his favourite horse, and that horse was stabled in this yard and so on. So really excited about that opportunity. It's going to be an amazing wedding venue, but also a really very, very cool place for corporates to hold their events as well. So yeah, in general growth, but with that growth comes the opportunity to reinvest back into the fabric of the building and the multiple projects that we want to do to further reduce our carbon footprint here at Ashridge.
Amazing. And what have you got planned for this year?
Oh, we've got so much planned for this year. Again, as David said, we've got these extra venues that are coming online, but also from a food point of view, we're looking into more suppliers. Like I say, we're looking at more local. We're also looking at more sustainable products. It doesn't always have to be local, but also what we're looking at is our packaging. How we're getting our foods delivered to us. Our sustainability and our recycling as well. And I think that's a big point for us this year, is about our recycling, and it's interesting to work for a company that is very invested in that, and to work with a group of people that are all on board. Some properties you work at, you find one or two people are invested in that, and the rest of you are picking up the slack. But yeah, here it seems to be everybody that wants to come on that journey. So I think that's the exciting thing for us this year, is as being fairly new here, I've been here just under a year now. That journey this year is the real opportunity for the chefs to be involved and move forward, with the suppliers, with how we recycle, and the new products that we've got coming on board. Duke's Yard is going to be a huge part for us, where we can do some very sustainable new things.
It sounds like a place that people should just go and have a look at.
Or better yet, Bob, they could just host an event with us.
Well, that's the obvious, yeah. Well, I'll put links to your social media and to the website in the show notes, so everybody knows about it. And yeah, go check it out and make it your next venue for your event. Thank you very much for your time, David, Noel, and Matt.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go check out Ashridge House. Huge thanks to Matt, David, and Noel for their time, and a big thank you to our partners for their continued support. Vivid Inc., PR and social media marketing specialists for the event industry, and Event Flow, the secret weapon for event teams who have had it with PDF exhibitor manuals. and you can show your support by liking and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a comment or a thought you would like to share about this episode, then head over to EPM Journal Community and find out how. Thanks for listening.